No matter your age or gender, you've most likely heard of it, had friends and family play it, or have even played it yourself. What I'm talking about, of course, is Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game that has swept the world multiple times over. With no boards, cards, or models required, the game is a series of dice rolls, problem solving, and imaginations. Dungeons and Dragons, or D&D for short, was first published in 1974 and was the creation of two friends, Gary Gygax and Dave Amundsen. Now 50 years old, D&D has had a lengthy, controversial, and famous history since its humble beginnings in 1974 to its 5th edition self in 2024. Initial reviews of the game were somewhat mediocre. Many people felt as if the game wasn't fleshed out enough, and though a cool concept, needed a lot of work. An original review in 1974 by Arnold Hendrick, a professional board game designer and miniature maker, stated that D&D's concept was remarkably interesting, but that the rules were overly complicated, with very little detail, explanation, or procedures. It only took a couple of years, but by 1981, the game had well over 3 million players worldwide, which pales into comparison of North America's 17 million players in 2017, with millions more across the globe. Though D&D is widely popular, it isn't without its critics of its own. And the critics of the mid to late 80s were especially harsh. Many religious groups in the United States at the time believed that the game promoted Satanism, suicide, cults, and murder. This idea was propelled by an episode of 60 Minutes in 1985 titled The Dangers of D&D, which called D&D a game of violence, depravity, and even debauchery. Within this episode, D&D creator Gary Gygax actually defends his creation from accusations of it causing the suicide of 2 young teens, cult formations, and even instilling the idea of murder into children. Though these accusations seem dooming for any sort of product or idea today, D&D managed to push through and remain a cult classic to this day. Even recently, D&D has managed to push new players, products, and even a 2-hour-long movie produced by Paramount Pictures. As I stated earlier, Dungeons & Dragons has stood the test of time and is now in its 5th edition, which was released in 2014. A simple game has evolved from dice and daring to entire pre-written campaigns, immersive board game style sets, miniatures, maps, and in-game statistics. Its ever-growing player base has turned the game from a cult classic to a pop culture phenomenon. Part of its recent superstardom can be attributed to Netflix's 2016 summer hit Stranger Things, which takes place in the 80s, and its main cast is a group of kids who are seen playing and making D&D references throughout the 5 seasons of the show. Since then, D&D sets, merchandise, and campaigns have been flying off the shelves. According to Roll Britannia, a professional D&D podcast based in the UK, Wizards of the Coast, the current publishers and copyright holders of Dungeons & Dragons, reported significant rises and an all-time player and sale peak of D&D and its merchandise in the fall of 2016 and in the spring of 2017. It can be safely assumed that the nostalgia of D&D, paired with its endless replayability, will keep Dungeons & Dragons a cult classic and at the top of the list of role-playing games for a very, very long time.